time of year is always super frustrating for snowmobilers because, you know, you bought your trail permit and, you know, a lot of you guys have bought a brand new snowmobile and you're waiting to use it. And, you know, this time of year, it's right at the beginning of the season. We've just sort of had our first couple of good snowfalls and people are watching those trail maps and wondering when the trails are going to open. And you do read a lot of frustration online, but you know what, guys, don't take it out on the OFSC because there's some pretty specific conditions that need to be met before they can open those trails. One thing you need is for the ground to be frozen, right? You need a good layer of frost in that ground to be able to maintain that snow base once they do get grooming. You actually need a fair bit more snow than you think you do before they can start grooming, because they need a good 8 to 10 inches of hard packed snow after they've groomed for a good enough base to ride on. You can see this. Well, this is the main reason those trails aren't open. They're just not ready. So it looked like I had a good base of snow here. And I took the sled out for just a little boot down the road just to get it out and warm it up. And so where it looked like I had plenty of snow, my carbides took this right down to the ground. That's the same thing you're going to do on the trail. So I mean, I think it goes without saying that a snowmobile is meant to run on the snow. So if you don't have enough snow, the weight of the snowmobile will compress that snow pretty quickly, and before you know it, your skis and your carbides and your track are hitting gravel instead of snow, and obviously that's going to shorten the lifespan of those parts. But it's also really hard on the trails. Now, we do tend to have short memories. We typically will get a melt in this part of Ontario, you know, in just after Christmas maybe. So even if we do get snow before Christmas, if they get the groomers out too soon, the base is going to melt anyway, and they've wasted their money. Now, we did have, you know, a couple of unusual years the last 2 years, so we get a lot of extra riding in, but it's quite often not until January that we can just ask yourself what makes more sense, right? Do you want those groomers out early so we can get a bit more riding in, or waiting till everything's nice and frozen solid and they're spending those resources in prime riding time? You know, the other reason is the landowners. Remember that a lot of the trails that you're using, it's because landowners gave the OFSC permission to use their land, and those agreements may not be in place until December or later. You know, keep in mind too that these trails don't just magically appear, right? You know, if you know anything about the weather up here, you know, back in the bush, it's through the fall season that can be, you know, pretty muddy and wet and inaccessible. You can have a lot of trees down and growth that needs to be cut back for these trails. You know, before the snow even gets on them, there's a lot of work. So, you know, sometimes it's later in the season before that part of the work is done. If you look behind me, you got this stream isn't even frozen over yet. So even though you look around and it's all white and it looks like there's plenty of snow, if this stream is still running in open water, then it's pretty likely that the ground under this snow isn't frozen solid yet either. So again, that's damage to the trail itself, damage to the sleds, and damage to the groomers. So guys, I'm hoping that doesn't come off as too preachy, because that's not what I'm trying to do. I just want to give some of the newer riders an idea of all the work that goes into these trails and the things that have to happen before they can open for you. Because I understand why it's frustrating. So I did have somebody recently say, you know, shouldn't you get a refund if the trails don't open? You know what? I can only speak for myself. I'm not a spokesman for the OFSC. I'm just a guy with a snowmobile that loves riding these trails, and I never think that way. You know, I think that there are thousands of kilometers of trails, that they are really well maintained by a lot of well-meaning volunteers that really try to promote the sport. I'm sure that OFSC is in operation all year long, and that revenue goes to good use, right? They'd have signage, they'd have expenses through the year, they'd have marketing. So yeah, no, I don't really expect a refund. All right, I'm starting to get pretty cold out here, so let's head inside and I'll show you where you can check the trail status. So I just thought I'd quickly show you how you can check the trail statuses in your area, or how you can look at the trails in your area if you were on a planned trip, for example. So we're going to begin by going to the Ontario Federation of Snowmobile Club's website, which is ofsc.on.ca. This is a great place for a new snowmobile rider to start, because there's just a ton of information on snowmobiling in Ontario. Where we want to begin is under Trip Planner in this menu, and we'll go to Trail Guide. The first thing we'll see is the overall trail status for all of Ontario, and a lot of it is red. There's a menu along the bottom here that shows you that red means the trail is unavailable. There is some hope though, and we're going to zoom in on my district. You can see overlaid on the map, there's some light colored numbers there. I'm in District 9, which is the Bruce Peninsula area. And it just kind of centers and zooms on the district that you choose. So if I'm planning a trip, I can look and see, okay, well, I can't take my sled out here. We've got some limited availability underneath, below Owen Sound, and if we look over here in the Kawartha Lakes, they have one trail that's fully available, and so there is some hope. The other thing I wanted to show you is under Points of Interest, this menu here. So if you're planning a trip up north and you want to see where can I get fuel, for example, it'll show you. Or I've had a couple of people ask me where you can buy permits. So you can buy a permit on the OFSC website. That's an easy way to do it. That's how I bought mine this year. But you can also, if you highlight that, and then one other thing I'll show you, if you click on these points of interest, it'll actually give you additional information. So by the bay, you may have seen this in another one of my trail videos, but this is a really great spot. You can get something to eat, you can buy a trail permit. So really good, lots of features. I would take some time to explore this. You can even see specific routes. But it's a great way to plan your trip and check trail availability. Okay guys, so I hope you found that helpful. I know it's frustrating, but I hope it gives you some idea of what has to happen before the trails are open. If you found it useful, go ahead and hit that like button or hit subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.